Hey guys, it is the Green Squire, and I am joined today by.
Sladow-Noob.
Hello, yes, so we are going to do a quick air guide together where he's going to play his other friend, and I'm just going to spectate and kind of just quiz him on what he's doing. So hopefully we can shed some light on, why he does what he's doing. And yeah, we'll see where this one goes. Sladow, just for fun, what is your ranking again?
I'm like 2000 in ladder and probably global like 2.2k, I would say.
2000
Depending on who
2.2k. So he's he's slightly better than a noob. I would get absolutely annihilated if I tried to play him. But yeah, let's see what we get into.
Exactly. My good thing about this map is that's basically a rather basic air map, I would say, because usually you have like the front spots, which for reasons everyone knows in like team games we just really ignore and we focus on air. So you basically got like some maxes around 14, 15 and some reclaim around the base, but that's about it.
Exactly. And you are which color for everyone?
I am the red color.
You are the red color. Okay, cool.
That's Seraphim. We both rolled Seraphim, which is kind of interesting.
Okay, so your initial build order here, it looks like a land factory, and then you went straight for 4 mexes, it looks like?
Exactly. Like I'm doing the basic Hydro Rush. What many people get wrong on the air spot is like you should never start with an air factory. It's
Really?
basically
Okay.
because what people think the air spot is about is to spam like Tech 1 and Tech 2 air, and that's about it, and they want to have like an air factory out rather soonish.
Right, that's probably what I would do.
But the problem with that is, first of all, you have to change your build order, because the air factory simply is more energy expensive, so you can only build 3 maxes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And the other thing is, you want the energy factory to basically run the entire time. But if you mix in air units, then you obviously will build air units at some point and will lack engineers.
Interesting.
Which
Okay.
are-
So you went 1 land factory, 4 mexes with your commander, and then you built a hydro with the first couple engineers.
Exactly.
Got it. And now you just have the land factory just spamming out T1 engineers, essentially, just for reclaim and mexes and all that good stuff?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay. And now it looks like you're going on to power generators with your commander. Looks like a pretty exact number. Is it 6 every time, or does it kind of change based on the map?
Although it's gut feeling. Like the moment for now, after this one, I have enough energy, so I will just cancel the other orders, and I will basically go for maxes.
Got
Because-
it. Interesting. Okay.
Maybe I even overbuild power, because I'm getting like a second hydro, which isn't often the case, which is basically like 5 pigeons, so you can actually be more greedy and go for like 2 pigeons instead, but it's like really playing around with power.
Interesting.
It's-
Got it. Okay. And so you guys are just both playing the air role. You're not going to build like a land army.
Exactly.
Neither of you guys have built an air factory yet. When about do you typically do that, I guess?
It really comes down to the map, because in like some maps with like a lot of reclaim, you actually want some Tech 1 air and drop like the reclaim, but it's important to not just steal your teammates reclaim. But on the most maps, your only role is Tech 3 air. So you want to delay the factory quite a bit, because early on you don't really have a mass to and for the energy required for it. So I would actually say like minute 6 you can go like Tech 2 air. So you can actually delay the air factory to like 3 maxes at Tech 2 or something like that.
Interesting. Okay. And now it looks like you have 1 mass extractor T2.
Exactly.
Are you upgrading? Yeah, it looks like you're upgrading one other one in your base.
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys are playing, you're pretending there's teammates at the other spots, right? So you're not going to reclaim the other, or you're not going to
Yes.
build bases on the other ones? Got it.
Exactly. And also a key factor about air is like, if you observe an SU, it's just walking to the middle. Because like SU is worth 2 entries, right? And what many or like most air players think is that the SU is somewhat necessary to kill a base, and no. Unless it's like a 20 by 20 map and you spawn in like a corner. It's like usually 90% your SU will get value by just standing at the front, so just make sure to involve your SU at some point.
Got it. Okay, right. He's worth about 2 engineers at Tech 1, but about like 20 tanks or something. Is that
Yes,
right? Got
exactly.
it. So it's almost always better to have him on the front lines.
Yeah.
Or basically always better. So, what are you doing right now? Now that you have, the mass extractors built, you have a couple power generators. It looks like you're not super base building, and you have a bunch of engineers paused.
Yeah. The fun thing about airs, at least that's a fun thing for me, you gotta play around with your eco bars basically. So this means to pause and unpause your engines this whole time in order to not stall. So when you see I have like 2 engine groups and I stall mass, I will automatically pause the ones behind with a max and wait for the other one to finish.
Interesting.
Just like, yeah.
Okay, so if you're stalling, it's better to pause your engineers and not stall, even if they're like upgrading a mass extractor?
Yeah, exactly. Because like if you have like another one running, then you want to finish that one first.
Got it.
And now it comes a time where you get like more mass because you have like 2 max extractors. That means you have to scale your energy as well now, which is the tricky part. That means now I have to basically balance out building pigeons while upgrading max to get rid of a mass. And yeah.
Wow, super interesting. Okay. So when do you go for Tech 2 factories?
I'm gonna start soonish because like now I'm scaling the energy and I want to use the energy. So what I can do is I can start the Tech 2 upgrade and just not really assist it heavily, but it will get rid of quite some energy, which is what I will offer.
And are you doing that? You're probably going to do that on your air factory that you're building right now, I assume?
Yes. Never go Tech 2 on like your SU or land factory. It's just straight out a mistake.
Got it. That makes sense. I mean, if you're playing air, you don't really need it there. Interesting. Okay. And then you guys haven't scouted yet, I guess, at this because you just got your factories up. What are your thoughts on scouting?
That's not our problem, honestly. Like the teammates should have Tech 1 anyway because Tech 1 isn't our job. So if we get bombed, what some lower ranks do is like blame the air player. But which is not their case. I mean, I got flamed a lot about that. I'm like, that's not my job. Yeah, it's. I have no idea why, but yeah. And so.
Scouting. Okay, interesting. Because the other players should build air factories. What are the? I guess that's a good segue. What are the other players' roles with air in games like these?
It comes down to the spots, honestly, because some spots rely on heavy air with like Tech 2 air usage and stuff like that. On this one, only the side players have like more air carrying because they have to support the middle. But that's about it. So they can honestly decide on their game plan, I would say.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. But generally, it's on other people to scout, at least at first, because the air player, they have a more important role of getting to T3 ASAP, basically.
Exactly. And what people underestimate is like if you're getting like an air factory to scout, you have to build the 3 pigeons and the air factory, which also adds up already to like basically a Tech 2 max if you wanted to call it like that. Right. So it actually puts you behind quite a bit for just doing that.
Interesting. Okay. And now you have a power kind of farm going.
Exactly.
How much do you typically float energy per second?
I usually aim for 0 energy. At this point I'm overflowing like 70 right now, but the optimal way is like 0. That's a fun part because like for Tech 3 you basically need 2 pigeons, 2 Tech 2 pigeons, but that's not because the Tech 3 air upgrade is like so expensive. It's only because of the Tech 3 pigeon. And that's what it basically means is that you can spend your entire energy. If you have like, for example, now I put my Tech 1 engines on the Tech 3 air HQ. Basically spending my energy while going up with a second pigeon as well.
Interesting. Okay. And you put, I guess, talk about placement briefly, because you have 1 Tech 2 power generator adjacent to your air factory, and then another one. It looks like you're planning for your grid kind of thing.
It looks like it, but it's just laziness.
Is it really?
Yeah. What you can do is you can place both Tech 2 pigeons next to the air factory if possible. You only want to save the space for like a Tech 3 pigeon. This one is just like because I got used to it. And because my main reason is like if you build your Tech 2 pigeons next to each other, one strat will kill both of them in one go. So either you invest into like a shield, or you just spread them apart so only one of them dies. Which is basically what I use.
Because yeah, that's what I do. I typically build a couple Tech 2 generators under a shield. But I guess that's a good point if you just spread them out.
Yeah. I mean,
That's the same
honestly
thing.
I honestly just hate shields because there's so much mess. It's like I
Really?
basically never beat shields again, except for like the Cybern ones or around on SND.
Really? Even in, I'm assuming like later, like late game, you kind of have to shield your base, right? Or no?
Funnily enough, the time I built this first shield is like when the enemy tech 3 are already finished. So I'm like, maybe I'm not the perfect example, but I just like to drag it out because like a tech 3 shield is like, what, 3600 mess around that?
Wow,
So it's like
that's
basically a
very
tech 3
interesting.
mix.
Are you, do many people do that? I feel like most people, build shields pretty regularly. You're the, maybe I'm just out of the loop, but, I'm not used to people not building shields.
In Hummings, you don't see it that often, like on more, how do I call it, more important expansions at front, you see people doing that. But I honestly just disagree with them. Because I'm like, that's mess you kind of need to spend on your eco, so I'm like, why should I?
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, and,
Bigger
I guess
issue is
oh yeah, go ahead.
the bigger issue is you're later and your team gets punished
Exactly.
and not you. I mean, you can protect yourself with a shield, but your teammates has nexus around the map, and you can strat, or your enemy will strat them, or
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
snipe
Right.
someone.
Interesting. Okay, and yeah, speaking of which, looks like you guys are both at the T3 air mark. I think it came in just under the 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So wow, that's a great T3 air in under 10 minutes.
Funnily enough, this is like actually quite late, and it usually
Really?
depends because like because what I usually dislike is to wing maxes on like maps like these, and it all comes down to scouting the opponent because like if your opponent really rushes tech 3 with like less eco, you obviously don't want to wing any maxes and you want to get tech 3 even sooner, and this is just basically because of like the playstyle we have right now.
Yeah, of course. You guys are being casual talking with me and getting a late 10-minute Tech 3 air when I struggle to do it in probably like 15. But no, this is super informative. And now you guys looks like you're both building some spy planes, and then I'm assuming you're just gonna start the ASF or air superiority mini game of sorts.
Yeah. And basically everything what happens now is based on the game state.
Right.
Because like what many people do is like I have tech 3 air now, that means I'm going tech 3 maxes, which is just a blunder as well. Because like every tech 3 max you are basically upgrading should be a decision you actively think about.
Really?
Meaning if you're behind in air, do not invest into any tech 3 maxes. Because that moment your opponent notices, he will abuse his air. Right? So, and you're like, your front players are getting raided.
So
that's
only is that mainly if you're an air roll, or is that just more in general if you're behind, don't do T3 max?
That's only for air.
Only for air, okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
for
very
air.
interesting. So you got, just talking about timing a little bit more, you got your Tech 3 Air Factory, and then you started your first T3 max upgrade.
I didn't yet, because like I only scouted now and I see like we are someone equal, so I will probably go for Tech 3 mix soon. But I could also decide and go for like heavy air usage. And this is where like factions come into play a bit. The main problem with Seraphim is even they got like better Tech 2 and gunships now due to a recent, I would call it buff or like change, they don't have a Tech 3 gunships, right? So what I usually do personally with Seraphim is to play more eco heavily and go for like the long term, for like Eros, etc. While other factions can rely on Tech 3 gunships more. So that's also like a factor, but it's more of a, I would say, hiring thingy, because like you can abuse strats or novas as well.
Interesting. Okay. Do you reclaim your old power generators slash, I guess mainly power generators T1 and T2?
Yes, but primarily only after I get Wes. And now is the point, because Wes is pretty useful because like obviously your eco can't get threaded if it's in your ICU, and it can power up quite some factories. So the moment you are like equal with air, what I'm going to do is I'm building a transport, get my ICU back, and then I'm just gonna upgrade Wes and air Wes to get like a nice advantage.
Interesting. Okay.
It's like the typical timing is for like reaching from after the first Tech 3 pigeon, or like I would say the latest like the second Tech 3 pigeon you want to do that, because it gives you mass as well and it's just like nice. And after that you basically reclaim your Tech 1 and Tech 2 pigeons.
So one thing I've noticed that medium ranked players do it's something that noobs aren't good enough to do, but top level players don't do. Intermediate players will set a like rally point in kind of like a circle so that their fighters never land and they're always patrolling. I've noticed like really good players don't do that. Can you shed some light on why that is?
Yes, and that's probably mainly because of two reasons. Like the first one, obviously, they have fuel. So if you're talking about
Right.
lower tech fighters, they are just going to be out of fuel. But the main reason, if you spread your ASF across the map with like a petrol move, but your opponent clumps it, he can have less AFF than you do, but if he engages, half your ASF are basically out of place. While the others have to turn around before shooting. Meaning, if you patrol, then your opponent will just basically farm your ASF and you cannot do anything against it because they are
Interesting.
at the other side.
Yeah, of course, because your ASFs are attacking like one at a time in a line, and then the other guys
Exactly.
are all clumped up, so they're obviously gonna win.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. And now, so how does RAS fall in resource allocation system? How does that fall into the eco compared to Tech 3 powder generators and Tech 3 mass extractors?
And basically, Wes gives you like nearly a Tech 3 pigeon. Air was basically nearly 2. That means for me it's like an addition for like pigeons and not primarily mass. Mass is like a nice bonus gift you get, but I will do
Really?
mostly for the energy.
Interesting. Okay. And you can't like what as opposed to just building power generators. What's the advantage of having it on your commander? It never dies. Basically.
Exactly, that's one point. And because of bonus mass, I think it's like just more efficient to get Wes than Tech 3 pigeons. I have to check the stats though, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Okay, and obviously if your commander dies, you lose the game. So it's basically just a Tech 3 power generator that shouldn't ever die.
Exactly. And one thing I realized, or like I saw lower rank people do, is like they stall through res, which is like a huge blunder. Because when you do anything, you don't want to stall energy, because especially in air, you need the mass to scale. And if you stall power, you obviously don't generate mass. That means if you're going for res, try and never stall energy with that. Meaning, pause some energy, pause the air factory, that's totally fine.
Got it. Okay, so it's I mean obviously not ideal to stall mass, but you should never ever stall power because that also affects your mass.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Okay.
And now that I have the race, I can basically just reclaim my pigeons slowly and like scale my air grid and see what I want to do.
Interesting. So do you build your grid around the hydrocarbon plant every time, or sometimes you start the grid in like a random area? How does the grid building logic work?
The nice thing about the hydro is like the adjacency. The hydro basically works like a tech 2 pigeon.
Okay.
This is a nice thing. So if you can, I would always go for the hydro. But if there are like Nexus blocking it or you don't have a hydro, I would build a factory around like Nexus. Or like I can, not sure if you can see it, but at like the base on top of my grid, you can start a grid like this. Basically adjacent to one max, and you can basically just scale from there. Which also works.
Interesting. Okay. So when does the first? I guess it depends on the rest of the game, but it looks like you guys are both pretty stagnant with your air forces right now. What would you be doing in a real game? I guess if there was, fighting on the front lines happening, like some battles for the side skirt islands. Would you still just be building up, or would you have like gunships supporting? What would you be doing?
That's hard to tell because, first of all, it depends on your teammates, what they're doing or if they're getting crushed. And besides that, it also comes down to factions. But in this state, usually I do build up quite a bit and then only check what to do, because, for example, if I have impact now, but my opponent just outscales me, we might win like one spot at like the top, but in 5 minutes I completely lose air and just all my front players can't push anymore. That's basically the trade-off. So
Interesting.
I will
Okay.
try. Yeah, I'm usually going for like the long-term game. And the moment, what also some people do is like they invest into nukes or Tech 3 RDS air. But the thing is with that, because that's so much mass you invest, you can also just outscale your opponent pretty easily and just kill the entire team with strats or Tech 3 gunships or something like that. Which is like a nice thing.
Interesting. Okay. And now it looks like you're starting to build the Tech 3 mass extractors.
Yeah. Basically, I'm basically checking how many factory he has, and I'm like, okay, we are roughly equal, so I don't really have to keep up at the moment, nor is like obviously animate pressured. That means I can actually go invest into mass extractors now.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Got it.
And one key thingy, I don't think the round is going to take that long, but I would say the most complex aspect is like to scale air probably, that you won't float a lot of mass the moment all your maxes are Tech 3.
Don't float mass while you're Tech 3.
Exactly, because like the thing, what most people do is they just spend their mass into Tech 3 maxes, but the moment they upgraded all maxes, they usually float like 30 to 40,000 max.
Yeah. Wow. Guilty in some cases. Because the upgrade is so significant, you get so much more that if you're not actively building something, it's really easy to overflow on it.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
And
like
it's not the end of the world if it's a team game, right? Because it overflows to your allies, but in general, probably should be avoided.
Yes, and especially as air, because like if your opponent has like 40,000 mass invested into air more than you, then the game is usually over.
Interesting. Okay. How much would you say the game is decided by the air players in like a 4v4?
I would honestly go so far and say that either the strongest or second strongest player should play air, because it doesn't matter how good you are at like a land spot. If your air player falls behind quite a bit and like early on, then the game is usually just over, because like Tech 3 air is just still that dominant. So I can't really give a percentage, but I would just rely on saying like the strongest player should basically be on air.
And how would, for all the new players watching this, myself included, how do you get good at this? It's kind of like applying to jobs. Everyone wants like 2 years of experience for an entry-level role, but it's like, well, it's an entry-level role. How do I get 2 years of experience? How do you get good without, like, how do you get good, I guess?
Honestly, about air, it's like a bit, it's harder, I would say. Like, it's playing around with the eco a lot of, so I would honestly say the best thing to is like get a decent air replay where you don't know where the mistakes are, and honestly just ask a good player what to focus on, because usually what you will get or what you will find are unnecessary shields and like pigeons or like stuff you simply don't need, or like early air, and that simply adds up. So
Now's the moment where I have more air, because that I starting attacking and punish them for echoing more than me.
Oh, you noticed him teching up into Tech 3 maxes, so now you know you have more.
I did sort it, cause you will scout your enemy all time. Basically, more your mirror.
Oh yeah, so he caught me off guard now because I was basically explaining. He did it right.
Wow, and I should have, the micro strategy is just clicking in circles really fast, right? So you have the most frontal angles on your opponent at all times?
Exactly. So about the micro aspect, like if you have like below 150 ASF, it really comes down whether or not you are able to basically click in circles. Because if you are not able, then I would not recommend microing like this, because attack move is straight up usually better. Because if you like get a bad turn, half your ASF will just straight up die. And otherwise, the moment you have like 150 or more ASF, you just straight up want to attack with or stop command. And Judy made a more detailed video about like the air macro.
Yeah, and now that is the point who I force my enemy to build anti-air.
Static, right? Which isn't ideal, because the more static you have, that's the less mobile you have, obviously.
Yeah. And the main thing here now, what he did great is like he realized he has air and he basically abused air, which is perfectly fine and the way he should do it. The only disadvantage here is because we are playing like this 1v1 setup with only air, is that your entire reclaim is lying in your base, which usually doesn't happen. So like you can basically just punish fronts. And the nice thing about air is the moment you have air, you can either raid maxes or like prevent all the other front players from pushing entirely if they don't have like a lot of anti-air going. So winning air is not only about I can kill bases with it, but the moment you have air, the others, like the opponents, can't really push anymore. So your front players can basically just eco up as much as they want to. Which is like the nice thing.
Interesting. You're saying that all of his airplanes that died on your front line, so they're going to your economy, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, and now he built into looks like Tech 2 fighter bombers there.
Yes.
can you explain the thought process behind that one, the Tech 2 fighter bombers instead of gunships or strat bombers?
Problem is that strat bombers are quite hard to babysit because like they have quite an attack range and you have to micro them perfectly because otherwise they just fly through and get like bad turns. And with gunships, Seraphim doesn't have tech 3 gunships because if he was any other faction, he could just build tech 3 gunships and my air grid would be kinda dead now. But because he is Server, tech 2 gunships are not that great because they're still better than our gunships, but they still die quite easily to flag at some point. So he kinda has to rely on like strats and novas, which is like the main.
I think this game is a good example for stone shear paper.
Yeah.
It's like you saw an experimental pushing. You will build a lot of T2 fighter bombers to snipe them out.
Right. Interesting. Okay. And now you have, it looks like you have a ton of T3 engineers. How many T3 engineers do you normally build?
That totally comes down because like usually what I do is like I have, how do I put this into a nice rule of thumb? The thing you shouldn't do is like to build them infinitely on repeat.
Right.
What you should do is like take a look at your mass bar and the moment you see it starts getting fuller and fuller, you want one air factory, like maybe 2 air factories, produce like a couple of tech 3 factories. I would only recommend like building 5 at a time because they have a lot of build power. But that's basically how you can scale tech 3 engines.
Interesting. So if you're overflowing on mass, build some more tech 3 NGs and then just get started on mass heavy projects like strat bombers or nukes or artillery or something?
Yeah, or simply because I'm a simple man, I just scale my air grid even faster. Because what you usually see when doing like high rank lobbies, I usually have an air grid consisting out of 40 tech 3 factories, which seems a lot, but the moment I actually win here, I can basically just help out whatever I want.
Okay, so when do you guys start building game enders? We're 25 minutes in now. You guys have had T3 air for 15 minutes. You've already had your, decisive air battle essentially. When do you start building game enders?
Funnily enough, never.
Really?
I
because
think the best. Yeah, I'm sorry. I do think the best way to learn is to kill your enemy with no game enders. Just scale units and try to push them with that you have, and not sitting in your base and build most OP unit, because they are so expensive.
Yeah, because like when you go for a game ender, and what good opponents realize is he's investing like 100,000 mass into like a nice unit. That means I had 100,000 mass. And usually what happens like I'm playing like average ranked lobbies as well, is that I can basically just abuse tech 3 and build a game with that. And the moment you can really start working on like a big project as the air player is when you basically SAMmed up, or like your players have like SAMs on your entire side of the map. So air simply cannot get through that easily. Then you can actually do it. But besides that, I would honestly recommend focusing on air for the most part. And this game would have been over the moment I lost air anyway, because like you could just like pressure all the fronts. So that's about that.
Interesting. Okay, that's actually really similar to what I said in my noob mistakes video about T1 point defense. Honestly, I just told new players just don't worry about it at first. It'll be better just to put that mass into like an army they can move. It sounds really similar in this case. Instead of building a static point defense that's expensive and can't move, just put it into something they can, because it's way more useful.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Gotcha. Okay, very interesting. And then similar to Tech 1 again, if there's nowhere else to go, or like if there's SAMs all over the map, that's the case when you would, but that's super late into the game.
Yes, exactly.
And that's
Problem from
yeah, go ahead.
The problem from new players is they don't know where they need to use the T1 point defense by some important choke points and things like that.
Right. And game enders are different than experimentals. So what are your thoughts on experimentals?
It's okay, only talking about the air units, you should never build like a land experimentalist air player for obvious reasons. And for the experimental itself, the Aeros is basically straight up the best experimental you can have as air player, because the moment it's out, it can just lie at the back of your base. But you force all your opponents that they can't push with any non-Tech 4 push. Because like every Tech 3 RD will just get obliterated straight away. Which is like perfectly. And so the Evers is great for like just having it, and your front players can basically do whatever they want. They don't have to worry about anything except for like C4 pushes.
Interesting. Okay.
The Soul Ripper is something I personally like. I might be quite biased there, but I hate it. Because each time I saw a Soul Ripper, I'm like, you could have just the same mass in like tick 3 gunships and basically get the same outcome. Because Soul Ripper is a bit like Janus, they scale, the more you have, the better they are. But personally, I just rely on tick 3 gunships for that one. So it's like, you can build it, but I'm not a huge fan of it, I would say.
So, this is just curious. You guys both went Seraphim as air players, even though they don't have Tech 3 gunships. What are your thoughts on the faction's air playing potential?
I honestly dislike Seraphim for the most part. It's only because we both went random factions, because I usually do. And the problem is basically, with Seraphim, do I wanna put it like that? Yeah, you basically want to play more eco heavily and go for the long term. And while our factions don't. The nice thing about the factions is, especially as like Aeon, that they have restores. So if you have like smaller maps where like the speed of air doesn't matter that much, instead of building ASF, you can just build restores and both do something for winning air, yeah exactly, and also land. Because while they do not have a great DPS for either air or land, the thing is that they can basically do both.
Yeah.
And they are more costly mass-wise, but you need like 2 ASF to counter 1 restore. So yeah, it also depends who you ask, but I'm a person I know.
2 ASF to counter 1 restore?
Yes. Because otherwise I wouldn't take a fight, because usually restores will win.
Really? On a 1v1, restores will kill an ASF?
Yes.
Huh. Is that because they're like longer range, or why is that?
And mostly because of health. Because I think they have 6,000 health, and because you micro them differently. While basically ASF have to turn around and shoot, you can basically use the gunship and move it into the direction the ASF is coming from, so we basically shoot one less time than usual.
Wow.
Which is like
interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
But I mean, ASFs are still faster, right? So you don't want them just as your main, unit.
Yes, and that's completely
or restores as your main unit.
Exactly, that's entirely true. And like this map is a good example because like you could actually go for like some restors, but you would need SAMs on the sides because otherwise threats will just fly around and you have a hard time catching it. So what I usually do is like I build mostly ASF at first, but then I would switch to restore, so I basically have both at some point.
Interesting. At what point do you stop building ASFs? Never?
Basically only if there is an emergency. For example, there's like a Tech 4 unit standing in front of my base, or if I one air completely and I can basically switch to anything what deals damage, bombers, gunships, etc.
Similar question. At what point do you stop building air factories?
Honestly, the moment I have full Tech 3 eco and I can't support my factories. Besides that, I would just scale the air factory the entire time. This is, for example, like the size I have now currently is basically, draining all my mass I have from the maxes. I talked quite a bit, so my balancing is not perfect. But around this is like a good size, I would say, for such an eco.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
And one important thing about air while we are at it is like if you lost air, and your teammates basically get harassed by like Tech 3 gunships because that's what the other air player is gonna do. Then what most people do is try and snipe the gunships, etc. After you lost air, that's like the biggest mistake you can do. Because the moment you have like 20% less ASF than your opponent, there is like a 0% chance you will win air. So the actual right move is like, if you are gonna lose a base because of air, it's better than just throwing air away again. So what you want to do is SAM up, keep your air at your base and build your air force up again. Even though you get flamed, that's just how air player is. It's like nothing you can...
So if you lose a decisive air battle, don't even try to go for the gunships. Just try to build your air force back up again.
Yes.
And because you can build static defense on the gunships to some effect, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. And you'll just get roasted by your teammates, but it's just kind of We'll send them to this video, this timestamp, and be like, hey, Sladow told us.
I mean, that's a funny thing about FAF, because it doesn't matter the map. It doesn't matter which spot loses, the air players always have one at fault. It's like a rule that never changed.
Interesting. I hope that'll change, because we're all trying to get the same outcome. Just really quick, I've noticed both you guys, what is the keyboard shortcut to send different units like different places across the maps at the exact same time? A couple times I've seen you guys send waves of scouts to like the front line, but like all up and down the front line. How do you do that?
Oh, it was this first move, but how is it called now? It's like...
Is it called like split attack or something?
It's called distribute orders now.
Distribute
It's like a hotkey. Exactly, it's in game now. And what you basically do is that you queue up multiple move commands, hit that hotkey, and they get spoiled nice and evenly, which is perfect for scouts waves.
Got it. Okay, interesting. And you pretty much... I've noticed you guys always send scouts in waves too. You never send them single.
Yes. And the thing about scouts is they are insanely expensive. They're like 200 mass each.
Really?
So yeah, so if you send like a scout wave, you invest like 3,000, 2 to 3,000 mass sometimes. So sending the single one of them is like, if there's the same, you will just invest mass, like west mass the whole time. So better invest into like a scout wave at some point, especially after having an Omni, and you should be good to go mostly.
Huh. So now you guys both have Omni pretty much, it looks like.
Yeah.
How
well, I also know that...
What?
Yep. I also know that he is an Everser, which is like his winning condition right now. So that's something I have to shoot against. So now is the time. I know my opponent basically now has a strong unit. That's where I usually start investing into shields.
Interesting. Okay. So what is the win condition? You guys both just have massive blobs of area units. How do you break this stalemate?
Either by investing so much into air that you eventually win, which usually is the case at some point because someone gets pushed and it's not a stalemate anymore, so you have to support, or by placing SAMs around the map. Like he already starts SAM creeping, and if he builds enough SAMs, like 30 SAMs around this whole side of his map, then he can start investing into like bigger projects.
Interesting. Okay, because he knows that you can't attack him because he just has such good air coverage, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I did saw my enemy was scaling his air grid so big, and I did echo them much. But at this point, he don't punish me because I was ahead on air.
Yeah.
And because of that, I have in the late game more mass to spend.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah,
my win condition. Yeah.
No, continue.
And yes, my win condition is the air vessel that he has scouted. And I need to punish them before they get shields up from the complete air grid.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how much at this stage of the game is like secret? Like, how soon did you know about that T4 bomber, Sladow?
It was eventually scouted. Like he DM'd me like, hey, you might want to scout, but I had an Omni, so I basically saw it straight away.
Got it. So there's not much that players do that like gets by you guys, right? It's pretty much you guys are just fully aware for the most part of everything.
Funnily enough, yes, that's true. Because like it's just as air player, you just simply have to keep an eye out. But this is a great example of like the air micro, because at this point you have such a large scale of ASF that you do not want to fly circles, and you just want to stop micro. And
his whole air force just got liquidated. That was crazy. It wasn't this spinning around like you did last time. It looks like your fighters were all just kind of doing their own thing. What did you guys do that time to micro?
And this time, Yuri made like a more detailed video, but the moment my first ASF met his ASF, I simply pressed stop. And basically just took an eye that all my ASF are still in the fight and don't fly away. And that's about it. You do not want to do more than that. They will search their own targets, etc. That's about it.
And so when they get to a point of being this big, it's better just to let them pick their own targets?
Yes. Do not micro them anymore. Just press stop and see what happens. That's about it.
Interesting. And that happens like at what point? When it's like at what point do you do the circling micro versus the giant blob micro? Technical name.
I would probably say like 150 ASF. is like a good number for that.
Interesting. And why can't
maybe
you... Oh, go ahead.
maybe one thing for the early game, if you pressure your enemy on air, is have an tech-free scout nearby your ASF or the point where you will punish your enemy, cause it's a mobile tech-free Omni, and it costs you no energy.
That's true. Because earlier you simply don't have an Omni, so you kind of have to.
What would happen if you just use the stop at like 50 to 100 ASFs?
It depends, because like if you do not know how to do the circle micro properly, then it's a better option for you. Because before you do it wrong, just press stop. But the chances that you will lose against someone with a proper circle micro is pretty high that you just lose your entire ASF force.
So, I have another question here. You just melted his whole Air Force, but it doesn't look like you have really punished him for it. What are your thoughts, like right now, like immediately after you had air superiority? What were you doing with it?
The main reason I didn't punish him is because I was busy with like, hey, did I forget to expand something? But in a normal game, what you want to do at this point, because I have an eco, is just go for an air vessel. You can also go for like no first, but the chances that he will win air again in the future is basically zero. Because I had 300 ASF, and there's like nearly zero chance that he can close this gap anytime in the future, especially because I'm investing basically everything into air.
Okay, so what would be his strategy at this point? Just
honestly, most of the time it's game over at this point.
Really?
Yeah, because like the SAMs are not enough he has, and for example, if there was a front going on, I can just like kill Navy, I can kill front, I can do everything I want. So most of the times, this is the moment where that's such a big air difference, because I have like 150,000 mass in air advantage. You cannot close the gap anymore. You can try and build a lot of SAMs and tell all your front players to just SAM up. And hope that it's gonna be enough, but most of the time it won't. Because like, even though if your front players invest into a lot of anti-air, and you might close the gap a bit, but then your front players lack the mass at front. So my front players basically just win. Which is like...
So how come this is basically a game over, but when he had his victory in the beginning and he had strat bombers in your base, you didn't seem too worried that time?
Yeah, but that's because of the matchup. Because as mentioned before, it was like, if I had front players, then I would probably have lost the game as well. So it's like, it's hard to explain. Because what was his ace? I think he was 40 ahead. He could have basically just won the entire front on his own, so even though earlier on it would have also been game over, probably most likely, but only because of the setup we are playing right now, we just continue playing, because it was like, we are only the air players, so it's nothing too much.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think those are like the most basic things. Like the key parts is basically just scaling to not make too much tech-free maxes without it being like a certain decision, and then just scale air until you basically win air. Which honestly
seems easy enough.
That's you'll be surprised how many players do not follow this rule, and this is like the main reason I win air most of the time.
Interesting. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I probably would have built like an experimental or something, like a land experimental, just because it's very tangible. You can see your unit walking across a map, you can see it destroying stuff, but what's not tangible as much is maybe just the conceptual understanding of like air power, and just understanding the air role, which is really interesting.
Oh yes, that's where our replay like the videos getting through, because that's exactly the point where I had like a small air win, and I basically play on and basically get a bigger and bigger advantage over time. So yeah, not like this.
So that was a bad engagement for Aeon, right? Because he had all his fighters facing the wrong way.
Yes.
Oh, but he was going for the bomber, I see.
Exactly. And this is like the thing, the funny thing is, in a normal game, this is a point where you do not want inside the bomber, if it's not my only winning condition. Because, well, I had 300 ASF again. So I can maybe just do the next watch, and that's about it.
So a probably better target priority probably would have been just trying to keep his fighters alive, or
yes, yeah,
and just let the bomber just ravage.
Sadly enough, yeah, because usually if you front players with SAMs, so I would have to clear some front bases first. So you will lose 1 or 2 bases, but you will keep air, which is like the trade-off.
Which is conceptually more important, yeah.
Yes.
Interesting, okay. Wow, I'm shocked at both times how fast his Air Force just absolutely melted away. It was like a snap of the fingers and just everything is gone.
Yeah. It's incredible how much.
Yeah. And now
firepower.
And now you've already pretty much spammed up another bomber as well.
Yes. Because usually what happens is like I ask my team for mass, and it's like, hey, here's air, he can do it. That's our winning condition now. But at this point I just pause something and just let it through because it's like there's nothing else to worry, so I'm having fun.
And so he's Sam creeping a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean,
theoretically, yes, but I can just airbuster the SAMs as well, which is the nice thing.
right.
I will get some damage, but it's fine. If you're sweaty enough, you can even get like the restoration field on the SCU and the bomber and let it repair a bit before sending it in again. But you don't see that one a lot.
Huh. So at this point, how many of your factories are on ASF production versus strats versus other projects?
At this point, like I was building the airbuster, so half is passed, but at this point I switch all my factories to bombers and gunships because there's no need for more ASF.
Interesting.
Yeah. And basically now it's just like a slow and painful death, basically, because there's just no way of getting through. Except he watched Sladow-Noob because I'm not paying attention, but...
You're not worried about him spamming up 150 ASFs somehow?
No, not really. Because like he needs exactly my, or like roughly my ASF account, because otherwise like his Air Force just gets melted again.
And yeah, unless you do something horrifically wrong, you're probably unlikely to lose an air engagement.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, and now he's basically his things, his ASF just die again because he doesn't have equal amounts, and that's about it.
Wow.
So
you think your T4 bomber and your strats in different waves?
Yeah.
Looks like you got him this time.
No, not really, because like he's SAMs, but I think that's all you can add in a rebuild, because this is just gonna be back and forth.
Right.
Usually from tragic, but yeah. Alright.
Wow.
Did I forget something? No, not really.
I mean, at this point, it's only hope I getting not bombed and can snipe the winning condition from my enemy out.
Yeah.
Which is good luck with that, essentially.
Yeah, basically.
Interesting. Well, that was incredibly enlightening to see you guys do that. Thanks so much for joining me and answering all those questions. I know I was pestering you guys with quite a few there.
No, it is. That's it.
But yeah, I can definitely see how you have the stronger position here. Now, if I was a newer player and I saw someone with double the ASFs, I'd probably think like, hey, it's only double the ASFs, I can just, build them up really quickly. But you pretty clearly showed that it's really just a matter of time at this point.
Yeah, indeed. And it's even to such a point that even Cheeseberry, like the other trainer, even wrote in caps like, don't fight air if you have like 20% less AFF. Like capped and like large scale, it's like, that's really important advice.
Right, interesting. Well, thank you so much for going through all this stuff again. Quick shout out, you are on my Discord channel. When you're in the coaching server there, you give free advice to everyone there. I've learned a ton from you. I learned a ton from you again. So yeah, if anyone wants to come talk Sladow, come check out our Discord. And yeah.
Looking forward to helping.
Yeah, you have any final comments, either of you guys?
Just ignore the flag when you're a VR player. That's basically the main point. I would say, just do your thing and don't throw away your ASF the entire time.
Gotcha. Well, cool guys. Thanks so much again. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next video.
And then you take this beam up here and put it in a field which is like perpendicular to it. And it will split up again.
Okay.
50-50.
Right.
And now is the thing. If you take this one again and put it into the same magnetic field as the first one, only the ones which where atoms looked like this went this way, right?
Right.
So what you would expect is like, obviously, all of them would go here.
Right.
But it doesn't happen. It splits again.